I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when my phone rang, and the name that lit up the screen was one I always answered without hesitation: Marcus. My big brother. The one who taught me how to ride a bike, who threatened my prom date with airport security humor, who flew Boeing 777s across continents and still found time to check on his little sister. So when his name flashed across my screen at 7:13 p.m., I smiled. I had no idea that in exactly 4 to 7 seconds, my entire world would collapse. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, you need to hear every word of this, let me ask you something. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share isn't just my story. It's a warning. It's proof that the person sleeping next to you, the one you've built a life with, might be living an entirely different existence when you're not looking. And if you've ever felt that cold grip of suspicion, that nauseating intuition that something isn't right, then you need to check the description box below. There are more stories like this there. Stories of betrayal, survival, and the kind of revenge that restores balance to a broken universe. I answered Marcus's call while standing in my kitchen, stirring pasta sauce that I'd been perfecting for the past hour. The kitchen smelled like garlic and basil, warm and domestic, the kind of smell that's supposed to mean safety. Home. My husband David was in the living room, sprawled on our grey sectional couch with his laptop balanced on his thighs, supposedly working on a presentation for his sales meeting the next day. I could hear the faint clicking of his keyboard, the occasional sigh, the sounds of a man absorbed in work. Normal. Comfortable. Safe. "Hey, Mark," I said, my voice bright, unsuspecting. "What's up? Aren't you supposed to be flying tonight?" There was a pause. In that pause, I heard something that made my stirring hand slow. My brother's breathing was off. Sharp. Controlled in that way people breathe when they're trying to stay calm while their mind is racing. "Natalie," he said, and his voice had that tone. That serious, no-jokes tone that made my stomach clench even before he continued. "Is David home?" I glanced toward the living room. I could see the top of David's head over the back of the couch, his brown hair slightly messy in that way I used to find endearing. The laptop screen cast a blue glow on his face. "Yes, he's here," I said, confused by the question. "He's working on his laptop." "Why?" Another pause. Longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was tight, carefully measured, like he was reading coordinates to a control tower during an emergency landing. "Natalie, that's impossible." My hand stopped stirring completely. The wooden spoon hung suspended in the thick red sauce. "What do you mean, impossible?" "I mean," Marcus said slowly, each word deliberate, "that David just boarded my flight 10 minutes ago. Flight 2847, Dallas to Miami. He's in seat 14B. And he's not alone, National. There's a woman with him. Blonde. Mid-30s. They're sitting together, and from what I saw when I did my pre-flight cabin walk, they're very comfortable with each other." The kitchen tilted. I'm not being dramatic. The entire room actually seemed to shift on its axis. My vision tunneled, and all I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears and the sound of typing coming from the living room. That steady click-click-click of someone working. Someone who was supposed to be right there. Someone who was supposed to be my husband. "Marcus, that doesn't make sense," I whispered, my voice barely functioning. "He's right here. I can see him. I can hear him typing." "Natalie, I'm looking at him right now. I'm literally standing in the cockpit, and I watched him board." I recognized him immediately. Same David I had Thanksgiving with last year. Same guy who wore that ridiculous Cowboys jersey to the Super Bowl party. "It's him. And Nat." His voice cracked slightly. The way he's looking at this woman. The way she's touching his arm. This isn't business. This isn't a work colleague. My legs felt weak. I reached out and gripped the counter, my knuckles going white. The sauce began to bubble, but I didn't move to turn down the heat. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the back of someone's head in my living room. "I need to go," I whispered. "Nat, wait." But I'd already ended the call. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I set down the spoon, turned off the burner through pure muscle memory, and walked slowly toward the living room. Each step felt like I was wading through concrete. My mind was splitting in two, one half screaming that Marcus must be wrong, that there had to be an explanation, and the other half already knowing the truth with crystal clarity. I rounded the corner into the living room, and that's when I saw him clearly. The man on my couch, bathed in laptop light, typing away. Brown hair. Same build as David. Wearing one of David's favorite grey t-shirts. But as I stood there, frozen in the doorway, I realized something that made my blood turn to ice. I couldn't see his face. David, I said, my voice trembling. The typing stopped. The man on the couch went completely still. Then, slowly, so slowly it felt like a horror movie, he turned around. It wasn't David. The face looking back at me belonged to Cole. David's younger brother. The resemblance was strong enough that from behind, in low light, you could mistake them. Same hair color, same build, similar mannerisms. But this was not my husband. Hey, Natalie, Cole said, and his voice was quiet. Guilty. I can explain. That's when I heard them. Footsteps. Behind me. Coming from the hallway that led to our bedroom. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that made the floorboards creak. I spun around, and emerging from the shadows of the hallway was David. My actual husband. Wearing different clothes than he'd had on an hour ago. Dark jeans and a button-down shirt I'd never seen before. His face was pale, his eyes wide, and in his hand was a small rolling suitcase. He froze when he saw me. We stood there, maybe 10 feet apart, staring at each other. Behind me, I heard Cole stand up from the couch. I was trapped between them, these two brothers, in the middle of my living room that suddenly felt like foreign territory. Natalie, David said, and his voice was pleading. I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. But I knew. In that moment, with my brother's words still echoing in my head and David standing there with a packed suitcase, trying to sneak out of our house while his brother impersonated him on the couch, I knew exactly what this was. My brother just called me, I said, my voice eerily calm. He's a pilot. And he just watched you board a flight to Miami with another woman. David's face went from pale to grey. His mouth opened, then closed. The suitcase handle slipped from his fingers and clattered to the hardwood floor. Cole spoke up from behind me, his voice tight with something that might have been shame. Nat, he asked me to cover for him. Just for tonight. I didn't know you'd. Get out, I said, not taking my eyes off David. Both of you. Get out of my house. Natalie, please, just let me, David started. Now. The word tore out of me, loud and raw and filled with every ounce of rage that was starting to replace the shock. Get the fuck out of my house before I call the police and tell them you're trespassing. David grabbed his suitcase. He looked like he wanted to say something, but one look at my face must have told him this wasn't the time. He moved toward the door, and Cole followed, both of them silent. The door opened, closed, and then I was alone. I stood in my living room, the smell of garlic and basil still hanging in the air, and I started to laugh. It was a terrible sound, high and broken, the laugh of someone whose reality had just been shredded. How long had this been happening? How many times had Cole sat on my couch, pretending to be David, while my husband flew off to Miami with some blonde woman? How many lies had I believed? How many times had I kissed him goodbye, made him dinner, slept beside him, completely unaware that I was married to a stranger? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called Marcus back. Nat! He answered on the first ring. Are you okay? No, I whispered. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to watch David on that flight. Take pictures if you can do it discreetly. Document everything. When they board, where they sit, how they interact. Everything. Can you do that? There was no hesitation. Absolutely. I'm so sorry, sis. Don't be sorry, I said, and something hard and cold was settling into place where my heart used to be. Just help me get proof. Because before this is over, David is going to regret the day he ever thought he could make a fool out of me. I hung up and looked around at the home we'd built together over 6 years of marriage. The framed photos on the walls. The furniture we'd picked out together. The life I thought was real. And I started planning. If David wanted to play games, I would show him what happens when you underestimate the woman you promised to love and honor. He thought I was just his faithful, trusting wife. He had no idea what I was capable of when someone tried to destroy me. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face when I'd confronted him, that mixture of guilt and panic and calculation. I saw Cole on my couch, typing away like he was actually my husband. I heard Marcus's voice saying they're very comfortable with each other. So I stayed awake, sitting at our kitchen table in the dark, drinking coffee and waiting for dawn like it might bring answers. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. A text from Marcus with 3 attachments. My hands trembled as I opened them. The first photo showed David and the blonde woman in their seats. He was leaning toward her, his hand resting on her knee, both of them smiling. The second showed them with drinks, toasting each other like they were celebrating something. The third, the one that made bile rise in my throat, showed David kissing her cheek while she laughed, her hand cupped around the back of his neck in a gesture so intimate, so familiar, that I knew immediately this wasn't new. This was established. Comfortable. This was a relationship. Marcus's text came through. They deplaned together. Shared an Uber. I'm so sorry, National. What do you need from me? What did I need? I needed to understand how my life had become a lie. I needed to know when this started, how long it had been going on, and most importantly, I needed to make sure David paid for every single moment of deception. I texted back, "Thank you. I'll figure out the rest. Love you." Then I opened my laptop and started digging. You know that saying about how you never really know someone? It's true in ways you can't imagine until you're sitting in the dark, scrolling through 6 years of credit card statements, looking for proof that your husband has been living a double life. And if you've ever been in this position, suspicious, heartbroken, desperate for answers, then you understand why I'm telling you this story. Hit that subscribe button, because what I uncovered over the next few hours will shock you. And check the description box below for more stories of betrayal and revenge, because you need to know you're not alone in this. I started with our joint credit card. The one we used for household expenses. I'd always been the organized one, the one who managed our finances, but David had his own card on the account. I'd never scrutinized his charges before. Why would I? He was my husband. I trusted him. What a fool I'd been. The charges went back months. Restaurants in Miami I'd never heard of. A hotel called the Sapphire Coast Resort, charged once a month like clockwork, always on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. Jewelry purchases from a boutique in Coral Gables, jewelry I'd never received. Flowers from a Miami florist, delivered to an address I didn't recognize. The amounts were always carefully calculated, never large enough to be suspicious on their own, but when I added them up over 6 months, we were talking about $15,000. $15,000 spent on another woman while I was at home, working my marketing job, making dinner, being the devoted wife. My coffee went cold as I scrolled deeper. I found charges for couples spa treatments, matching robes from some luxury spa brand, dinner reservations at restaurants I'd begged David to take me to, only to be told we couldn't afford it right now. He'd told me we needed to save money, that his sales numbers were down, that we should be more careful with spending, all while he was buying champagne and rose petals for someone else. I pulled up our bank statements next. We had separate checking accounts and one joint savings account. I'd always transferred my half of the bills to the joint account religiously. But David's contributions had been getting smaller over the past year. He'd explained it away, tough quarter, restructuring at work, commission delays. I'd believed every word, even picked up extra freelance projects to cover the shortfall. But his personal account? The one I technically didn't have access to, but knew the password because he'd given it to me years ago and never changed it. That account told a different story. Regular deposits from his sales commissions, just like always. Large transfers out every month, between $2,000 and $3,000, to a credit card I'd never heard of. That's when I realized the joint credit card was just the tip of the iceberg. He had another card entirely, one I had no access to, and he was funneling money to it consistently. I sat back in my chair, the laptop screen casting blue light across my face in the dark kitchen. This wasn't an affair that started recently. This was calculated, organized. This was a man who'd created an entire financial system to support a second life. How had I missed this? The answer was simple, and it made me hate myself almost as much as I hated David. I'd been too trusting, too comfortable, too busy believing in the fairy tale of our marriage to see the rot underneath. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Landed. Just saw them get into the same Uber. Address was 2247, Coral Bay Drive, Miami. Looked like a residential neighborhood. I got the Uber's plate number if you need it. I typed the address into Google Maps. A nice neighborhood in Coral Gables, tree-lined streets, homes in the $500K to $700K range. I switched to real estate sites and searched recently sold properties. And there it was, 2247, Coral Bay Drive. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with a pool. Sold 8 months ago for $615,000 to David R. Chen. My maiden name is Richardson. David's middle name is Robert. David R. Chen. He'd even changed his last name to his mother's maiden name for this purchase. This wasn't just an affair. This was an alternate identity. An alternate life. I felt something crack inside my chest, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. The pain was physical, sharp, and spreading. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something cold and focused and absolutely ruthless. David thought he was clever. He thought he'd covered his tracks. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything. I took screenshots of every suspicious charge, every bank transfer, every piece of evidence I could find. I downloaded 6 months of statements and backed them up to a cloud drive David didn't know about. I made a timeline, cross-referencing his business trips with the hotel charges in Miami. They matched perfectly. Every single time he told me he was going to a sales conference or visiting a client, he'd been flying to Miami to play house with his mistress. The sun was starting to rise when I finally closed my laptop. Orange light filtered through the kitchen windows, landing on the framed photo of David and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy. So in love. I picked up the frame and stared at it, trying to find some hint in his eyes, some shadow that would have warned me. But there was nothing. Just a man smiling at his bride, making promises he had no intention of keeping. I set the frame face down on the table. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Nat, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. It's not what you think. I love you. I stared at those words. I love you. Such simple words, but coming from him now, they meant nothing. Less than nothing. They were just sounds, empty and hollow. I didn't respond. Let him sweat. Let him wonder what I was thinking, what I was planning. Because the truth was, I didn't know yet. But I knew it would be devastating. It would be calculated. And it would make sure that David Robert Chen, or David Richardson, or whatever the hell he wanted to call himself, would regret every lie he'd ever told me. I made a list of people I needed to talk to. Marcus was already on my team. But I needed more. I needed a lawyer, a good one. I needed to understand my legal options, what kind of evidence I could gather, how to protect myself financially. I needed to find out more about the woman in those photos, who she was, what she knew, whether she understood that the man she was kissing was married. And I needed to talk to Cole. That one surprised me, but as I sat there watching the sunrise, I realized Cole was a vulnerability in David's plan. Cole had looked guilty. Cole had said I didn't know you'd. which meant he hadn't fully understood what he was participating in. Maybe Cole could be flipped. Maybe Cole could give me information David never meant for me to have. At 7 a.m., I texted Cole, "We need to talk. Coffee at Rita's Cafe at 10 o'clock. Don't tell David." The response came 3 minutes later, "I'll be there." I showered for the first time in 12 hours, letting the hot water run over me until the bathroom was thick with steam. I looked at myself in the fogged mirror, 34 years old, dark brown hair, grey eyes that used to sparkle with contentment but now just looked haunted. I'd spent 6 years building a life with David. 6 years of cooking his favorite meals, supporting his career, planning our future. 6 years of making love, sharing dreams, building what I thought was an unbreakable bond. All of it had been a lie. But here's the thing about being lied to so completely. It clarifies things. All the politeness, all the social contracts, all the reasons you're supposed to be nice and forgiving and understanding, they disappear. When someone betrays you at this level, you don't owe them anything. Not kindness. Not mercy. Not a clean exit. I got dressed in jeans and a black sweater, pulled my hair back, and looked at myself one more time. The woman staring back at me looked different. Harder. More dangerous. Good. David was about to learn what happened when you broke something you couldn't fix. And I was going to make sure the lesson stuck. Rita's Cafe was one of those deliberately rustic coffee shops with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, the kind of place where everyone typed away on MacBooks and pretended to be working on screenplays. I arrived 15 minutes early and claimed a corner table, far from the windows, where I could see the door but wouldn't be easily seen from the street. Old habits from when I used to meet clients for my marketing consulting business, always control the environment, always see them coming. Cole walked in at exactly 10 a.m., which told me he was nervous. Punctuality is often a sign of guilt. He spotted me immediately and made his way over, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself smaller. He looked like David, but younger, less polished. Where David had learned to mask everything behind a charming smile and easy confidence, Cole still wore his emotions on his face. He sat down across from me without ordering coffee first. Another sign of nerves. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, my voice neutral. I'd practiced this on the drive over. Stay calm, stay in control, don't let anger leak through too soon. "Natalie, I'm so sorry," Cole started immediately, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them in all night. I never should have agreed to what David asked. I knew it was wrong, but he's my brother, and he said it was just for one night, that he had a last-minute business thing and didn't want you to worry, and How many times? I interrupted, my voice quiet but sharp. Cole froze. What? How many times have you done this? Sat on my couch, pretended to be David while he flew off to Miami to be with his mistress? Because I don't believe for a second that last night was the first time. The color drained from Cole's face. He looked down at the table, at his hands, anywhere but at me. That was answer enough. "Cole, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. And before you decide to protect your brother, you should know that I've already found enough evidence to bury him in divorce court. The only question is whether you're going to be collateral damage or whether you're going to help me understand what the hell has been happening in my life." He looked up then, and I saw something in his eyes that surprised me, relief. Like he'd been waiting for someone to give him permission to talk. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. You deserve to know." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. "Do you mind if I record this?" He hesitated for just a second, then shook his head. "No. Record it. Maybe it'll help." I hit record and set the phone on the table between us. "David first asked me to cover for him about 8 months ago," Cole began, his voice low. "He said he had a business opportunity in Miami, something that required him to be there for a day or two, but that you were stressed about work and he didn't want you worrying about him traveling so much. He asked if I could just hang out at your place for an evening, answer his phone if you called, make it look like he was home working. He said it was just this once, that the deal was important, and that he'd make it worth my while." "How much did he pay you?" I asked. $500. Each time. The number hung in the air between us. $500. I did quick math in my head. If this had been going on for 8 months, at least twice a month based on the credit card charges I'd found, that was $8,000. $8,000 to buy his brother's complicity in destroying his marriage. And you said yes. I said yes, Cole admitted, shame thick in his voice. I'm between jobs right now. National. I'm barely making rent. $500 for sitting on a couch for a few hours seemed like easy money. And he was my brother. I believed him when he said it was for work. When did you realize it wasn't? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Cole's jaw tightened. The third time he asked. He was too specific about the timing. He'd call me and say, I need you there by 7, and I'll text you at 10 when I'm leaving, but don't leave until 10:30 just to be safe. It was too choreographed. Too planned. That's when I started suspecting it wasn't really about business meetings. But you kept doing it, I said, and I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice anymore. I kept doing it, he confirmed miserably. And I know that makes me a terrible person. I told myself it wasn't my business, that if you two had problems, it was between you and David. But the truth is, I needed the money. And I was a coward. A barista called out someone's order, the sound of steaming milk and grinding coffee beans filling the momentary silence between us. I watched Cole carefully, reading his body language, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or just regret at getting caught. Did you ever meet her? I asked. The woman he's been seeing. Cole shook his head quickly. No. David never talked about her. I didn't even know for sure there was a woman until you said your brother saw him on the plane. I suspected, but I didn't know. What else can you tell me? About the trips, about his schedule, about anything that might help me understand how deep this goes. Cole thought for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table in a nervous rhythm that reminded me painfully of David. He was always Tuesday or Wednesday evenings. Never weekends. Never holidays. He'd be gone for exactly 24 to 36 hours. And he always paid me in cash, right before I'd head over to your place. Always exactly $500, already counted out, like he'd withdrawn it specifically for that purpose. That matched what I'd found in the bank records. Regular cash withdrawals, always in $500 amounts, always a day or two before the Miami charges appeared. Did he ever say anything else? Anything about why he was doing this, or what his plans were? Cole shifted uncomfortably. About 3 months ago, he said something that I didn't think much about at the time, but now it seems important. He said just a few more months and everything will be sorted out. I asked him what he meant, and he just smiled and said life changes, little brother. Sometimes you have to make tough choices to be happy. The words hit me like a physical blow. Life changes. Tough choices. He'd been planning something. Planning to leave me, maybe? Or planning something else entirely. Natalie, Cole said, leaning forward, his voice urgent now. I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything, but I really am sorry. What I did was wrong. I helped him lie to you, and there's no excuse for that. If there's anything I can do to make this right, anything at all, please let me know. I studied his face, looking for deception and finding only genuine remorse. Cole was weak, easily manipulated, too willing to compromise his values for cash. But he wasn't malicious. He was just a man who'd made bad choices and was now realizing the consequences. And more importantly, he could be useful. There is something you can do, I said slowly, an idea forming. But it's going to require you to keep lying to David. Can you do that? Cole's eyes widened. What do you mean? I leaned in closer, lowering my voice even though no one around us was paying attention. David's going to come back from Miami. He's going to try to smooth this over, try to convince me it was a one-time mistake or a misunderstanding. And I'm going to need time to plan my next move. So I need you to keep doing what you've been doing, but this time, you're going to report back to me. Every time he calls you, every place he asks you to cover for him, every single detail. You're going to be my eyes and ears. You want me to spy on my own brother? Cole asked, but there wasn't much resistance in his voice. Just resignation. I want you to help me get the truth, I corrected. The whole truth. Because I guarantee you, Cole, whatever David has told you, whatever you think you know about this situation, it's just the surface. And I'm going to dig until I hit bedrock. He was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with loyalty and guilt. Finally, he nodded. Okay. I'll do it. But Nat, what are you planning? I picked up my phone and stopped the recording. I'm planning to make sure that when this is all over, David understands exactly what he's lost. And he's going to understand it in a way he'll never forget. Cole looked at me, and I saw something like fear flicker across his face. Good. He should be afraid. They should all be afraid. We talked for another 20 minutes. Cole gave me details about David's patterns, his habits, the specific ways he'd coached Cole on how to impersonate him, how to sit, how to type, even how to sigh in that particular way David did when he was working. It was disturbing how much thought David had put into this deception. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment affair. This was premeditated, organized, and deeply planned. When we finally left the cafe, Cole looked relieved, like he'd just been to confession. But I felt energized, focused. I had an ally now, even if he was a reluctant one. And I had information. I sat in my car in the parking lot and pulled up my phone. 3 missed calls from David, 2 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. Then I called the law office of Patricia Hendricks, a divorce attorney I'd researched at 3 a.m. Her firm specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. Perfect. Hendricks Family Law, a professional voice answered. Hi, my name is Natalie Richardson. I need to schedule a consultation as soon as possible. My husband has been hiding assets and conducting an affair, and I need to know my options. I can get you in tomorrow at 2 p.m. Does that work? That's perfect, I said. I hung up and sat there for a moment, watching people walk in and out of the cafe, living their normal lives, unaware that my entire world had shifted on its axis. I thought about the woman in the photos Marcus had sent. I still didn't know her name, didn't know if she understood she was sleeping with a married man, didn't know what lies David had told her. But I would find out. I would find out everything. My phone buzzed with another text from David. Please, National. I love you. Let me come home so we can talk about this. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, you can come home. We should talk. Come by tonight at 7. His response was immediate. Thank you. I'll be there. I promise I can explain everything. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone setting a trap. Oh, David. You have no idea what's coming. David arrived at 6:55 p.m., which meant he'd probably been sitting in his car around the corner, watching the clock, too nervous to be early but too desperate to be late. I'd spent the day preparing for this moment, not emotionally preparing, because that would have been impossible, but strategically preparing. Every move from here on out had to be calculated. Every word had to serve a purpose. I'd changed the apartment subtly since last night. The framed wedding photo I'd turned face down was now gone entirely, along with 3 other photos of us throughout the house. Not all of them, that would be too obvious, but enough that the absence would register subconsciously. I'd packed a bag and left it visible in the bedroom, half hidden behind the door where he'd see it if he looked. I'd also made dinner, his favorite, chicken parmesan with garlic bread, and set the table for 2. The cognitive dissonance of welcoming domesticity combined with subtle signs of departure would keep him off balance. Unsure. Vulnerable. When I opened the door, David looked terrible. He clearly hadn't slept, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hair was disheveled in a way that seemed genuine rather than styled. He was still wearing the same button-down shirt from last night, now wrinkled. In his hands was a massive bouquet of roses, red ones, expensive, at least 5 dozen. Natalie, he said, his voice rough. Thank you for letting me come home. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain. I stepped aside without a word, and he entered. He tried to hand me the roses, but I just gestured toward the kitchen counter. He set them down, looking hurt. Good. I made dinner, I said, my voice neutral. We should eat while we talk. The confusion on his face was almost comical. He'd expected anger, tears, maybe thrown objects. He hadn't expected chicken parmesan. That was the point. We sat down at the table, and for a few surreal minutes, we ate in silence. I watched him struggle with whether to start talking or wait for me to speak first. He kept opening his mouth, then closing it, taking another bite, trying to read my expression. I kept my face carefully blank. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. Nat, I know what you must think of me right now. I know how bad this looks. But I need you to understand that what you saw last night, what your brother saw, it's not the whole story. I took a sip of water. Then tell me the whole story. He set down his fork and rubbed his hands over his face. Her name is Samantha. I met her about a year ago at a conference in Miami. We started talking, and something connected between us. But Natalie, I swear to you, it didn't start as an affair. It started as a friendship. A friendship, I repeated, my tone flat. Yes. We'd talk on the phone sometimes, text about work stuff. She's in marketing too. We had a lot in common professionally. And then, about 8 months ago, things shifted. We started talking more personally. About our lives, our relationships, our dreams. Our relationships, I said. So she knows you're married. David hesitated. She knows I'm married. But Nat, she also knows that we've been having problems. My fork clattered against my plate. Problems? What problems, David? Because from where I'm sitting, the only problem in our marriage was that my husband was living a double life. That's not fair, he said, and there was a flash of defensiveness in his voice that made my blood pressure spike. You've been so focused on your work, on your clients, on everything except us. When was the last time we went on a date? When was the last time we just talked, really talked, about something other than bills and schedules? I stared at him, genuinely stunned. He was trying to make this my fault. He was actually sitting here, after being caught with another woman, after spending $15,000 on her, after buying a house with her, and trying to blame me for not paying enough attention to him. You're right, I said quietly, and his face lit up with hope. We should have communicated better. I should have noticed that you were unhappy. So let me ask you this, David. When exactly were you planning to communicate to me that you bought a house in Miami with another woman? Every drop of color drained from his face. How did you? 2247, Coral Bay Drive, I said, watching him carefully. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, purchased 8 months ago under the name David R. Chen. Your mother's maiden name, right? Very creative. He looked like he might be sick. His hands were trembling now, and he pushed his plate away. Natalie, I can explain that. I'm sure you can. You've been explaining things all night. But here's what I already know. You've been flying to Miami twice a month for 8 months. You've been spending thousands of dollars on Samantha, dinners, jewelry, spa treatments, hotels before you bought the house. You've been paying your brother $500 each time to sit on our couch and pretend to be you so I wouldn't know you were gone. You've created an entire separate financial system with a credit card I don't have access to, and you've been draining our savings to fund your second life. Does that about cover it? David looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. How did you figure all this out? Does it matter? I asked. The point is, it's over. Your little secret is out. So now I need you to answer one question honestly. Were you ever planning to tell me? Or were you just going to keep lying until you figured out how to leave without losing everything? He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I was planning to tell you. I didn't know how. How long have you been planning to leave me for her? It's not like that. How long, David? 3 months, he whispered. We started talking about it seriously about 3 months ago. Samantha, she wanted me to tell you sooner, but I couldn't figure out how to do it without destroying everything we'd built. 3 months. 3 months of him knowing he wanted to leave, while I made him breakfast, did his laundry, planned our future. 3 months of sleeping next to a man who was already gone. Does she think you're getting divorced? I asked. We've talked about it, he admitted. But Nat, I want you to know that I never stopped caring about you. You're an amazing person, and what we had was real. It ran its course. People grow apart. It doesn't mean what we had wasn't meaningful. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or throw my full water glass in his face. But I did none of those things. Instead, I nodded slowly, like I was processing this information with mature understanding. Okay, I said. I appreciate your honesty. He blinked, surprised. You do. I do. And I think you're right, we've grown apart. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe we both need to move on. Hope bloomed across his face like a flower opening. He actually smiled. Nat, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. I was worried you'd make things difficult. Why would I make things difficult? I asked, taking another bite of chicken. If you're not happy, you're not happy. I'm not going to force you to stay in a marriage you don't want to be in. Thank you, he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. I really do care about you, and I want us to be able to do this amicably. We can work out the details, split everything fairly, stay friends even. Absolutely, I agreed. In fact, why don't you stay here tonight? We can start figuring out the logistics in the morning. I think it would be good for us to have one last night where we just remember the good times. No fighting. No drama. Just two people who loved each other once, saying goodbye properly. David looked at me like I'd just handed him the greatest gift of his life. Really? You'd want that? I think we both deserve closure, I said. Don't you? He reached across the table and took my hand. I let him, even though my skin crawled at his touch. You're incredible, National. I always knew you were special. This is why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your strength, your grace, your ability to see the bigger picture. I smiled at him. That's me. Always seeing the bigger picture. We finished dinner with David talking about how we'd handle the separation, how we'd divide assets, how maybe we could still be in each other's lives in some capacity. He was so relieved, so grateful that I wasn't fighting him, that he didn't notice I wasn't eating anymore. Didn't notice that I was just watching him, cataloguing every word, every gesture, every lie that fell from his lips like rain. After dinner, he actually hugged me. Thank you for being so understanding. I know this isn't easy for you. You have no idea, I said, and he completely missed the double meaning. He went to take a shower, and I sat on the couch, listening to the water run. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Hendricks, my new lawyer. Documentation looks solid. Will proceed as discussed. Do not confront him further until after meeting tomorrow. I'd already sent her everything I'd found, bank statements, credit card records, photos from Marcus, the recording of my conversation with Cole. She called me 3 hours ago to tell me I had enough evidence to annihilate David in divorce court, especially since we lived in a state where adultery and financial infidelity were grounds for fault-based divorce. Which meant David wouldn't just lose half of everything, he'd lose significantly more. His 401k, his pension, potentially his equity in the house, and he'd likely be on the hook for my attorney fees. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Because there was something else I needed first. I needed to know everything about Samantha. When David came out of the shower, I was waiting with a glass of wine for each of us. I've been thinking, I said carefully. If we're really going to do this amicably, I need to understand what I'm competing with. Tell me about her. About Samantha. David looked uncertain for a moment, but then the wine and his relief made him sloppy. He sat next to me on the couch, our couch, where his brother had impersonated him, and started talking. She's incredible, he said, his face actually lighting up. She's spontaneous in a way you and I never were. She loves adventure, trying new things. She makes me feel young again, like anything is possible. What does she do for work? I asked, keeping my voice interested, not jealous. She runs her own marketing consulting firm. Very successful. She actually doesn't need my money at all. That house? She paid for most of it. I just contributed about 30%. Interesting. So the house was in his name, but she'd paid for most of it. That was leverage. Does she have family in Miami? I asked. Her parents live there. She's close with them. She also has a daughter from a previous relationship. Lily, she's 8. Sweetest kid you'd ever meet. A daughter. Samantha had a daughter. And David had been playing stepfather while I sat at home, childless, waiting for him to be ready to start our family. The family he'd promised me in a few years every time I brought it up. Sounds like she's got a great life, I said. She does. And Nat, I know this is hard to hear, but being with her has made me realize what was missing in our marriage. That spark. That excitement. With you, everything became routine. Predictable. I can see how that would be boring, I said, and I wasn't even pretending anymore. But David was too self-absorbed to notice the edge in my voice. He kept talking. And talking. And talking. He told me about how Samantha loved salsa dancing and had been teaching him. How she made this amazing Cuban coffee every morning. How her daughter had called him Mr. David at first but was now starting to call him David Dad. How they'd all gone to Disney World together last month. During the weekend he told me he was at a mandatory work training. With every word, I felt the cold, hard thing inside my chest grow larger. More solid. More focused. David finally fell asleep around midnight, exhausted from his emotional confession and convinced that I was going to make his exit from our marriage easy. I waited until his breathing deepened into genuine sleep, then I got up and went to his jacket, hanging by the door. In the inside pocket, I found his phone. His password had always been 0614, our wedding anniversary, June 14th. I wondered if he'd changed it. He hadn't. Still too arrogant to think he needed to hide anything at this point. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and started scrolling. The text messages with Samantha went back 13 months, not 8. The early ones were flirty but innocent enough. But by month 3, they were sexual. Explicit. Planning meetups. And then, around month 5, Samantha sent, I told Lily about you today. She's excited to meet you. Are you sure you're really going to leave Natalie? David's response, I promise. Just need to figure out the timing. She's going to be hurt, but she'll be fine. She's strong. I screamed silently in that bathroom, my hand over my mouth to keep any sound from escaping. She's strong. Like that was permission to destroy me. Like my strength meant I didn't deserve consideration or honesty or basic fucking respect. I kept scrolling. Found emails about the house purchase. Found a joint credit card application in both their names, declined because David's credit score had tanked from all his secret spending. Found messages between David and Cole, with David coaching his brother on exactly how to impersonate him, with Cole expressing discomfort and David sending him increasing amounts of money. $600 the last time. $700 the time before that. And then I found the photos. Hundreds of them. David and Samantha at the beach. David and Samantha with her daughter at an aquarium. David and Samantha in bed together, both of them laughing at something. David and Samantha standing in front of the house in Miami, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera like they were posing for a Christmas card. A family. He'd created an entire family. And I wasn't in it. I forwarded everything to myself, every text, every email, every photo. Then I cleared the forwarding history so he wouldn't know. I put his phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to sit in the dark living room. If you've ever discovered that the person you loved most in the world was capable of this level of deception, you know what I felt in that moment. And if you haven't, then I hope you never do. But either way, you need to understand what happened next. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because this story is about to take a turn that will change everything. And check the description box for more stories like this. Stories of women who refused to be victims, who fought back, who made sure their betrayers understood the weight of their actions. I sat there until dawn, planning. By the time David woke up, I had a smile on my face and coffee brewing. "Morning," I said brightly. "Sleep well?" "Really well, actually," he said, looking surprised. "I haven't slept that well in months." "I'm glad," I said. "Listen, I was thinking, since we're being so mature about this, maybe you should go ahead and go to Miami this week. Spend time with Samantha. Start figuring out your new life. I'll use the time here to start packing my things, looking at apartments." "You do that?" he asked, stunned. "Of course. Why draw this out? Let's both start moving forward." He actually hugged me again. "You're amazing. I'll book a flight for tomorrow." "Perfect," I said into his shoulder. "That's perfect." He left for work an hour later, whistling. Actually whistling. And the moment the door closed, I called Patricia Hendricks. "I need to move faster than we discussed," I said. "How quickly can we file?" "With what you've sent me, I can file by end of day tomorrow." "But Natalie, are you sure you want to rush this?" "We could file tomorrow," I interrupted. "And I need one more thing. I need to know everything about Samantha Chen. Full background check. Where she works, who her clients are, what her financial situation really is, everything." "I have a guy who can do that. It'll cost about $1,500. "Do it," I said. "And Patricia, when we file, I want you to go for the throat. I want everything, the house, his pension, his 401k, alimony, attorney fees, everything. I want him to understand what it costs to build a life on lies." There was a pause, then Patricia said, "I'll make sure he never forgets it." I hung up and looked around at the apartment. Our apartment. That would soon be my apartment. And David's life? His perfect little Miami fantasy. I was about to burn it to the ground. The next 24 hours moved with the kind of surreal efficiency that only comes from pure, focused rage. While David packed for what he thought would be a peaceful trip to start his new life, I was systematically dismantling everything he'd built. Patricia's investigator came through faster than expected. By 2 p.m. the next day, I had a 50-page dossier on Samantha Chen sitting in my email inbox. I sat in a coffee shop across town, not Rita's, somewhere David would never think to look for me, and opened the file. Samantha Lauren Chen, age 36. Divorced 3 years ago from Marcus Chen, no relation to David's fake last name. David had chosen it randomly from his mother's side. She did indeed run a marketing firm called Blue Sky Consulting, with revenues around $400,000 annually. Impressive, but not as wildly successful as David had made it sound. The house on Coral Bay Drive had been purchased with a hefty mortgage. Samantha had put down 20%, and contrary to what David had told me, the loan was in both their names. David R. Chen and Samantha L. Chen. They'd applied as unmarried partners, which was legal but required extra documentation. Daughter Lily Chen, age 8, enrolled at Coral Springs Academy. Custody was split 50-50ths with the ex-husband, who was remarried and living in Fort Lauderdale. By all accounts, it was an amicable co-parenting relationship. But here's what made my blood run cold. Samantha had no idea David was still married. The investigator had included screenshots from Samantha's social media, which wasn't private. Multiple posts over the past 6 months referring to my boyfriend David and starting over after divorce. Posts about how grateful she was to find love again, how David had restored her faith in relationships. There was even a post from 3 weeks ago, Sometimes the universe sends you exactly the person you need. David came into my life when I'd given up on finding real partnership. He's honest, kind, and treats Lily like she's his own. I can't wait to see where this journey takes us. Honest. She thought he was honest. David had told her we were already divorced. Or separated, at minimum. He'd constructed a complete fiction for her just like he'd done for me. We were both his victims, both played by the same man with the same lies. The realization shifted something in me. I'd been planning to destroy Samantha along with David, expose her as a homewrecker, make her life as miserable as she'd made mine. But she wasn't a homewrecker. She was just another woman who'd believed a liar. I stared at her photos on my laptop screen. She was pretty, blonde, fit, with a warm smile that reached her eyes. In every photo with Lily, she looked like a devoted mother. In photos with David, she looked happy. Genuinely happy. The way I used to look before I realized I was married to a stranger. My phone buzzed. A text from David, at the airport. Thank you again for being so cool about everything. You're handling this better than I could have hoped. I typed back, just want us both to be happy. Safe flight. Then I called Patricia. Change of plans. What kind of change? She asked cautiously. I need you to hold off on filing the divorce papers for 48 hours. And I need you to book me a flight to Miami. Tomorrow morning, earliest you can get. Natalie, what are you planning? Something David won't see coming, I said. And something Samantha needs to know. There was a long pause. Then Patricia said, as your attorney, I'm obligated to tell you that confronting the other woman is generally not advisable. Noted. Book the flight anyway. Done. But Natalie, be careful. Grief and rage make people do things they regret. I'm not grieving, I said. I'm getting even. There's a difference. I hung up and pulled up Samantha's Instagram page again. She'd posted a story 2 hours ago, a photo of her home office with the caption busy day but worth it. Meeting with a potential new client at 4. Her location tag said Miami, Florida, and her business profile was linked. I clicked through to Blue Sky Consulting's website. Professional, clean, with a contact form and her business email prominently displayed. I stared at that email address for a full 5 minutes, my finger hovering over my laptop's trackpad. Then I clicked compose and started typing. Dear Ms. Chen. You don't know me, but we have something in common, a man named David Richardson. I'm writing to you because I believe you deserve to know the truth about who he really is. My name is Natalie Richardson. I am David's wife. Not his ex-wife. His current, legal wife. We were married 6 years ago and are not separated, not divorced, and until 4 days ago, I had no idea you existed. I'm not writing to attack you or blame you. From what I've learned, David has lied to you as much as he's lied to me. But I think you should know what you're actually involved in before you make any further life decisions with this man. Attached to this email, you'll find copies of our marriage certificate, photos of us together as recently as 3 months ago, bank statements showing joint accounts that are still active, and text messages between David and his brother Cole, in which David pays Cole to impersonate him at our home while he travels to be with you. I'm flying to Miami tomorrow. If you're willing to meet with me, I'd like to talk in person. Not to fight. Not to blame you. But to share information so we can both understand who we've been dealing with. If you're not interested in meeting, I understand. But please, at minimum, look at the documents I've attached. You deserve to make informed decisions about your life and your daughter's life. Sincerely, Natalie Richardson. I attached 20 pages of documentation, marriage certificate, joint bank statements, screenshots of David's texts with Cole, photos of David and me at my sister's wedding 6 weeks ago. Irrefutable proof that I existed, that our marriage existed, that everything David had told Samantha was a lie. My hand hovered over the send button. This was it. Once I sent this, there was no going back. David's carefully constructed world would implode. Samantha's happy new relationship would be revealed as fiction. Everything would change. I hit send. The email whooshed away, and I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. What had I just done? I'd weaponized the truth. I'd detonated a bomb in two people's lives. And I had absolutely no regrets. I stayed in that coffee shop for 3 more hours, laptop open, waiting. At 6:47 p.m., my email pinged with a response. Mrs. Richardson. I don't even know where to begin. I've been sitting here for the past 2 hours, looking at the documents you sent, and I feel like my entire world has been turned upside down. David told me you were divorced. He said it was finalized last year, that you'd both moved on, that you'd even started dating someone new. He said you'd agreed to keep the divorce quiet for professional reasons, which is why he never talked about it much. I have never, ever been involved with a married man. That is not who I am. I have a daughter. I have values. If I had known the truth, I would have never let this relationship develop. I will meet with you. Tomorrow. Name the time and place. I need to understand what's really been happening. I am so sorry. Not just for what is done to you, but for being an unwitting participant in your pain. Samantha. I read the email 3 times, looking for deception, for defensiveness, for anything that would confirm she'd known all along. But all I found was shock and genuine remorse. I typed back quickly, Rita's Cafe, 2247, Collins Avenue, 10 a.m.? It's public and neutral. Her response came 2 minutes later, I'll be there. I closed my laptop and sat in the dimming coffee shop, watching people walk by outside. Normal people, living normal lives, having normal problems. None of them knew that tomorrow morning, in a cafe in Miami, 2 women were going to meet and compare notes on how the same man had betrayed them both. And none of them knew what was going to happen when we decided to join forces. My phone rang. David. I let it ring 4 times before answering, making sure my voice sounded calm, unsuspicious. Hey, I said. How was the flight? Good. Really good. He sounded relaxed, happy. I'm at the house now. Sam made dinner. It's nice, national. It's really nice. I feel like I can finally breathe. I'm glad you're happy, I said, and I meant it in the most ironic way possible. How are you doing? Started packing yet? Not yet. I'm taking it slow. Processing everything. But I'm okay. Really? You're incredible, he said, and I could hear Samantha's voice in the background, asking him something. Listen, I should go. Dinner's ready. But thank you again for being so understanding about all this. Of course, I said. Enjoy your evening. I hung up and allowed myself a small, cold smile. Enjoy your evening, David. Because it's the last peaceful one you're going to have for a very long time. That night, I lay in bed in my hotel room. I wasn't staying in our apartment anymore. Every inch of it reminded me of lies, and I thought about what I would say to Samantha tomorrow. How do you bond with someone over mutual betrayal? How do you build an alliance with a stranger who's been sleeping with your husband, even if she didn't know he was your husband? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Samantha and I had something powerful in common. We both knew what it felt like to believe David's lies. We both knew what it felt like to build a future on his promises. We both thought we knew who he was. And now we both knew the truth. I fell asleep planning not revenge, but justice. There's a difference, though sometimes it's subtle. Revenge is emotional, chaotic, about making someone hurt the way they made you hurt. Justice is calculated, precise. It's about ensuring someone faces appropriate consequences for their actions. David was about to face consequences he couldn't imagine. The next morning, I caught a 7 a.m. flight to Miami. As the plane lifted off, I looked out the window at the city below, getting smaller and smaller. Everything I'd known was down there, my job, my friends, my old life. But that life was based on lies. This new life, the one I was flying toward, was based on truth. Painful, ugly, devastating truth. But truth nonetheless. The plane touched down in Miami at 10:42 a.m. I'd had to reschedule with Samantha for noon, which she'd agreed to immediately. I took an Uber to Rita's Cafe, because of course there was a Rita's Cafe in Miami too, they're everywhere, and arrived 15 minutes early. I ordered coffee I couldn't drink and sat at a corner table, watching the door. At exactly noon, a blonde woman walked in, looked around nervously, and locked eyes with me. Samantha. She was prettier in person than in her photos. But what struck me most was how scared she looked. She walked over slowly, like she was approaching something dangerous. Natalie, she asked. Samantha, I confirmed. Thank you for coming. She sat down across from me, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. Two women connected by the worst kind of circumstance. Then Samantha said, I need you to know something before we start. I had absolutely no idea you existed. David told me. I know what he told you, I interrupted gently. That we were divorced. That I'd moved on. That everything was settled. Yes, exactly that. She looked down at her hands. I would never, ever have gotten involved if I'd known the truth. I'm not that person. I believe you, I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it. I've seen your social media. I've read your posts. You really thought he was available. I feel like such a fool, she whispered. I'm a successful businesswoman. I'm a mother. I'm supposed to be smart. How did I not see this? Because he's good at lying, I said. Really, really good. He fooled me for 6 years, Samantha. He fooled his brother. He fooled you. This isn't your fault. She looked up, tears in her eyes. But it is partially my fault, isn't it? If I'd done more research, if I'd been more careful, if I'd insisted on meeting his family or seeing paperwork. He would have forged it, I said flatly. Or created some excuse. Or love-bombed you until you stopped asking questions. That's what manipulators do. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Samantha asked, What do you want from me? Why did you want to meet? Because, I said slowly, I want to make sure David faces consequences for what he's done. Real consequences. And I think you want the same thing. Samantha's jaw tightened. What did you have in mind? I leaned forward. Tell me everything. Every lie he's told you, every promise he's made, every plan you two have created together. And I'll tell you everything from my side. And then we're going to figure out how to make sure David Richardson never does this to anyone else ever again. Samantha stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said. Let's burn his life down. And that's exactly what we started planning. We talked for 4 hours straight. The cafe staff probably wanted us to leave, but we kept ordering coffees and pastries we didn't eat, and eventually they just left us alone in our corner booth, two women pouring out the truth of their broken hearts. Samantha went first. She told me how they'd met at a digital marketing summit in Miami 13 months ago. How David had approached her after her panel discussion on social media strategy, complimenting her insights and asking intelligent questions. How they'd ended up at the hotel bar with a group of other conference attendees, talking until 2 a.m. about industry trends and their respective career journeys. He told me that night he was divorced, Samantha said, her voice tight with anger. He said his wife, you, had wanted different things. That you'd grown apart. That the divorce had been finalized about a year prior and he was finally ready to start dating again. A year prior, I repeated. So he placed our divorce at almost exactly the time we celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary in Napa Valley. Samantha closed her eyes. I'm going to be sick. Keep going, I said. I need to hear all of it. They'd exchanged numbers that night. Started texting, first about work, then more personally. He'd flown back to Miami for a client meeting 6 weeks later and asked her to dinner. That was their first real date. He was charming, she said. Attentive. He asked about Lily right away, said he loved kids, wanted to hear all about her. Most men I dated either weren't interested in the fact that I had a daughter or saw it as a deal breaker. David seemed genuinely excited about it. He told me 2 years ago that he wasn't ready for kids, I said. That his career needed to be more stable first. I've been waiting for him to be ready for 5 years. Samantha's hands clenched into fists. That bastard. The relationship had progressed quickly. Within 3 months, David was flying to Miami twice a month. Always midweek, which Samantha had thought was because he was coordinating with his sales territory. He told her he was based in Dallas but traveled constantly for work, which explained why he couldn't see her on weekends. Those were his recovery days after weeks on the road. I thought I was being understanding, Samantha said bitterly. Giving him space. Not being the clingy girlfriend who demanded all his time. Meanwhile, he was going home to you every weekend. Did he ever sleep over at your place before you bought the house? I asked. A few times, but mostly we stayed in hotels. He said his apartment was a mess, that he was barely ever there, that it was more convenient to meet at nice hotels. I actually thought it was romantic. She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said firmly. Stop saying that. He's a con artist, Samantha. He conned both of us. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Then she continued. 5 months into their relationship, David had started talking about wanting something permanent. How tired he was of living between Dallas and Miami. How he wanted to build a real life with her. That's when he proposed buying a house together, Samantha said. He said he'd been saving up, that he had about $70,000 for a down payment. He wanted to contribute, to make it our home, not just mine. Where did he get $70,000? I asked, already dreading the answer. I assumed it was from his savings, Samantha said. From his divorce settlement, maybe. But you're saying. We had $96,000 in our joint savings account 8 months ago, I said flatly. As of last week, there's $23,000 left. I thought he'd lost it in bad investments. He told me he'd put some money into a friend's startup that went under. Samantha's face went white. He stole from you to buy a house with me. Technically, since we're married, it's marital property he was spending without my knowledge or consent. But yes, essentially, he stole our savings to play house with you. We sat with that for a moment. Then Samantha said, the house is in his name only. He said it was easier that way for tax purposes, since I was already claiming Lily as a dependent. I was skeptical, but he showed me all this documentation about how it would benefit us both financially. Was that all fake? I don't know yet, I said. But we're going to find out. Keep going. What else? She told me about meeting Lily 6 months ago. How nervous David had been, how he'd bought Lily a giant stuffed dolphin and taken them both to the Miami Seaquarium for their first meeting. How Lily had liked him immediately, and how Samantha had fallen even harder watching him interact with her daughter. He was so good with her, Samantha said, her voice breaking. Patient and funny and genuinely interested in her weird 8-year-old stories about Minecraft and her pet hermit crab. I thought I'd found this amazing man who wanted to be part of our lives. Who chose us. He did choose you, I said. He just failed to mention he'd already chosen someone else first. Samantha told me about their routines. David coming to Miami every other week, staying for a night or two. Them cooking dinner together, watching movies, being a makeshift family. Lily starting to call him David Dad. The 3 of them going to Disney World, to the beach, to the zoo. Building memories that now felt poisoned. 3 weeks ago, Samantha said, he told me he was ready to make it official. That he wanted to propose. He even showed me rings online, asked my opinion. He said by Christmas, we'd be engaged. Christmas was 3 months away. David had been planning to propose to his mistress while still married to me. The audacity was almost impressive. Did you ever try to look him up online? I asked. Social media, LinkedIn, anything. Of course I did, Samantha said defensively. When we first started dating. But he said he deleted all his social media after his divorce, that it was too painful to see memories of his old life. He has a LinkedIn, but it's bare bones, just his job title and company. I thought it was weird, but he said he was a private person. And honestly, I found it refreshing. So many guys are obsessed with their online presence. Another perfect lie, perfectly delivered. David's Facebook was full of photos of us. At least it had been 4 days ago. I deleted my access to it after I downloaded all the evidence I needed, but it had shown our whole relationship, engagement photos, wedding pictures, vacations, holidays. All public. All easily searchable if you knew to look for David Richardson instead of David Chen. He compartmentalized, I said. Different names, different accounts, different lives. He kept everything separate so neither of us would stumble onto the truth. How did you find out? Samantha asked. You said something about your brother. I told her the whole story, Marcus's phone call, finding Cole on my couch, David trying to sneak out with his suitcase. Her eyes got wider with each detail. His brother was pretending to be him? That's sociopathic. That's beyond just cheating. That's elaborate fraud. That's exactly what it is, I agreed. And that's why we're not going to just walk away and let him continue his life. We're going to make sure everyone knows exactly who David Richardson really is. Samantha leaned forward. What are you thinking? Okay, so here's what I know, I said, pulling out my phone and opening my notes app. David has committed multiple forms of fraud and deception. His stolen marital assets, our savings, to fund his affair and purchase property. He's lied to you about his marital status, which in some states could be considered fraud by deception. He's created false identities for legal documents. And he's enlisted his brother in a conspiracy to deceive me. Any one of those things is bad. All of them together, that's a pattern of behavior that destroys lives. So what do we do? Samantha asked. First, my divorce attorney is already preparing papers. I'm going to take him for everything he's got, the house here in Dallas, his pension, his 401k, alimony, attorney fees. In our state, adultery and financial fraud are grounds for fault-based divorce, which means I get significantly more than the standard 50-50 split. Samantha nodded. Good. He deserves that. Second, the house in Miami. You said it's in his name only. Yes. David R. Chen. But you paid for most of it, right? You said you put down most of the down payment. I did. About $60,000. He contributed his 70. Well, your $70,000. The deed is in his name, but I have all the bank records showing my wire transfer for the down payment. Perfect. That means you have a claim on the property. We'll need to get you a lawyer too, someone who specializes in property disputes. You can argue that you have equitable interest in the home based on your financial contribution, especially since you were deceived about his marital status when you made that contribution. Will that work? Samantha asked, hope creeping into her voice. I don't know. But we're going to try. And even if it doesn't work legally, the documentation will be useful for other purposes. What other purposes? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. His job. His reputation. His future. Samantha's eyes gleamed with understanding. Go on. David works for TechFlow Solutions, right? Big sales position, lots of client interaction, reputation is everything. That's what he told me. Is it true? It's true, I confirmed. I've verified it. And companies like TechFlow have morality clauses in their employment contracts. They also have strict policies about financial fraud and misrepresentation. If we document everything David has done, the theft of marital assets, the fraudulent property purchase, the creation of false identities for legal documents, and present it to his employer, they'll have to investigate. At minimum, he'll be put on leave. At maximum, he'll be fired. Would they really fire him over his personal life? Samantha asked doubtfully. They'll fire him for fraud, I corrected. For using company time and resources to conduct an affair, because I guarantee he was using work trips as cover. For the reputational risk he poses to the company. For the legal liability if any of this touches their business operations. Personal infidelity they might overlook. Systematic fraud and deception? That's a different story. Samantha was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "There's something else you should know. Something I didn't mention yet." "What?" "David and we were planning to merge our businesses. He said his company was looking to expand into marketing services, that he could bring me on as a consultant for their major accounts. He introduced me to his boss via video call about a month ago. Said we'd be signing a contract in the next few weeks." My mind raced. "Did you sign anything?" "No. We were still in the negotiation phase. But I'd already started restructuring my business to accommodate the expected new workload. I turned down 2 other potential clients because I was expecting this TechFlow contract to come through." "So he cost you money," I said. "Actual, quantifiable money. That's another legal claim. Can I sue him?" Samantha asked. "Maybe. For fraud, for intentional interference with business relationships, possibly for promissory estoppel if you can prove you reasonably relied on his promises to your detriment. We'll need to talk to an attorney, but yes, I think you have a case." We spent the next hour mapping out our strategy. Every legal avenue, every financial claim, every piece of evidence we had or needed to gather. Samantha pulled out her laptop and started showing me text messages between her and David, emails about the house purchase, receipts for expenses they'd shared. I showed her my bank statements, the photos Marcus had taken on the plane, the recording of my conversation with Cole. "This is insane," Samantha said, looking at the mountain of evidence we'd compiled. "This is absolutely insane. How did he think he'd get away with this?" "Because he'd been getting away with it for a year," I said. "And people get cocky. They start to believe they're smarter than everyone else. They stop being careful." "Well, he's about to learn he's not that smart," Samantha said grimly. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Hey babe, missing you already. Sam and I are at the beach with Lily. Wish you could see how beautiful it is here. Maybe someday when things are settled, we can all get together as friends." I showed Samantha the text. Her face went purple with rage. "He's texting you while he's with me? Right now?" "Apparently," I said. "What do you want to bet he's texted you today too?" Samantha grabbed her phone and scrolled through her messages. Sure enough, there was a text from David sent 15 minutes ago, taking Lily to get ice cream. "Love watching you with her. You're such an amazing mom. Lucky to have you both." We looked at each other, and simultaneously, we started laughing. It was bitter, angry laughter, but it was also cathartic. Here we were, the 2 women he'd been playing against each other, comparing notes while he sent lovey text messages to both of us. "Okay," I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "New plan. We're going to respond to him, both of us, and keep him comfortable. Make him think everything is fine. The longer he feels safe, the more evidence we can gather." "How long?" Samantha asked. "I need about a week to finalize everything with my attorney. Can you keep up the act for a week?" Samantha's jaw set. "I can do it for a month if it means destroying him properly." "A week should be enough." "And Samantha, during that week, I need you to document everything. Every conversation, every text, every promise he makes. If he talks about the future, record it. If he talks about money, screenshot it. If he makes any more business promises, get it in writing." "Done," she said. "What else?" "Does Lily's father know about David?" Samantha nodded. "Marcus, my ex, has met David a few times during custody exchanges. They seemed to get along fine." "Why?" "Because you're going to need to tell him the truth. Before this all explodes, He needs to know that the man his daughter has been calling David Dad is a married fraud. He'll need to know for Lily's sake. Samantha's face crumpled. Oh God. Lily. How do I explain this to Lily? I reached across the table and took her hand. We'll figure that out. But first, we make sure David can't hurt either of you anymore. Then we handle the emotional aftermath. She nodded, squeezing my hand. Thank you. I know this is crazy, us working together, but thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said. We haven't won anything yet. But we will. I promise you, Samantha, we will. We exchanged phone numbers and email addresses. We connected on every possible platform so we could communicate instantly. We took photos of all our documentation. She photographed mine, I photographed hers, so we each had complete records. We created a shared Google Drive folder and uploaded everything. By the time we left that cafe, we weren't just two betrayed women. We were a team. We were an army of two, armed with truth and evidence and the kind of rage that comes from being systematically deceived by someone you loved. One more thing, I said as we stood to leave. When this is over, when David has lost everything he values, I want you to be there. I want him to see us together. I want him to understand that we know everything, that we compared notes, that we chose each other over him. Samantha smiled, and it was fierce. I wouldn't miss it for the world. We hugged, actually hugged, two strangers bonded by betrayal and unified by purpose. Then we walked out of that cafe and into our respective Ubers, heading in different directions but working toward the same goal. Destroying David Richardson. I flew back to Dallas that evening, my head spinning with plans and strategies and next steps. When I landed, I had 3 texts from David. More loving messages, more lies, more manipulation. I responded to each one with careful normalcy, playing my role perfectly. But inside, I was counting down. 7 days until the hammer dropped. 7 days until David's world imploded. And I was going to enjoy every single second of it. The next 7 days were the longest and shortest of my life. Long because every minute I had to pretend everything was normal felt like an eternity. Short because there was so much to do, so much to prepare, and the hours seemed to evaporate. Patricia Hendricks was a machine. Within 48 hours of our meeting, she'd filed divorce papers, filed for an emergency injunction freezing all of David's accounts pending the outcome of the divorce, and submitted a detailed forensic accounting report documenting every dollar David had stolen from our marital assets. The sheriff's department was ready to serve him. We were just waiting for the right moment. Timing is everything, Patricia told me during one of our many phone calls. We want to hit him when he's most vulnerable, most unsuspecting. When's his next trip to Miami? This weekend, I said. He's flying out Friday afternoon, returning Sunday evening. Perfect. We'll serve him Friday evening at Samantha's house. Maximum impact, maximum humiliation. In Miami, Samantha had hired her own attorney, a shark named Robert Delgado who specialized in fraud cases. After reviewing her documentation, he'd informed her that yes, she absolutely had grounds to sue David for fraud, for the return of her down payment on the house, and potentially for punitive damages given the egregious nature of his deception. This is one of the most clear-cut fraud cases I've seen in years, Delgado had told her. He took your money under false pretenses, created a false identity to purchase property, and caused you measurable financial harm through his business promises. We're going to take him apart. But legal action was only part of the plan. The other part required more delicate maneuvering. Through a contact I'd made at TechFlow Solutions, a woman I'd worked with years ago who was now in their HR department, I'd learned that David's position was already somewhat precarious. His sales numbers had been declining for the past 6 months, ever since he'd started spending so much time in Miami. His boss had apparently given him a warning about his performance just 3 weeks ago. If you're planning to file a complaint against him, my contact had told me confidentially, now's the time. They're already looking for a reason to let him go. This would just accelerate the timeline. I drafted a detailed letter to TechFlow's ethics board, documenting David's theft of marital funds, his creation of fraudulent identities, his use of company time and resources to conduct an affair, and the potential liability he posed to the company. I'd attached bank records, screenshots, photos, everything. The letter was ready to send. I was just waiting for the right moment. That moment was Friday. Throughout the week, David texted me regularly. Sweet messages about how glad he was that we were handling things maturely. How he hoped we could remain friends. How he appreciated my understanding. Each message made my skin crawl, but I responded with carefully crafted replies that maintained the fiction that I was the understanding soon-to-be ex-wife. He had no idea what was coming. Samantha, meanwhile, was playing her role brilliantly. She texted me daily updates. David had arrived Wednesday evening for a midweek visit, claiming he'd negotiated some flex time at work. He'd taken Lily to school Thursday morning, played the doting stepdad-to-be. He'd cooked dinner for Samantha, told her he loved her, made plans for their future. All while the noose tightened around his neck. "I'm scared," Samantha texted me Thursday night. "What if this backfires? What if he gets away with it somehow?" "He won't," I texted back. "We have too much evidence, too many witnesses, too much documentation. He's not getting away with anything. Trust the process." Friday dawned bright and clear. I'd taken the day off work, claiming a personal emergency. I sat in my apartment, the apartment that would soon be mine alone, and watched the clock. David was scheduled to fly to Miami at 3 p.m. Samantha had texted me his flight information. He'd arrive at 5:47 p.m. Miami time. The sheriff's deputy would arrive at Samantha's house at 7 p.m. to serve the divorce papers. And I was going to be there to see it. I'd booked a last-minute flight to Miami, departing at 2 p.m. Samantha had offered to let me stay at her place, in one of the guest rooms, far away from where David would be. The irony of sleeping in my husband's mistress's house while planning his destruction wasn't lost on either of us. "This is crazy," Samantha had said when I'd suggested it. "This whole thing is absolutely insane." "Insane but necessary," I'd replied. "I need to see his face. I need to watch him realize what he's lost." At 1 p.m., I was at the airport. At 2 p.m., I was on the plane. At 5:30 p.m., I was in an Uber heading to 2247 Coral Bay Drive, the house David had bought with my money to play family with another woman. Samantha met me at the door. We'd only met once in person, but she hugged me like we were old friends. In a way, I suppose we were. Trauma bonding is a hell of a thing. "He's not here yet," she said. "His flight landed 15 minutes ago, so he should be here in about 30 minutes. Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready since the moment my brother called," I said. She led me through the house, a beautiful place with an open floor plan, high ceilings, and large windows overlooking a pool. This should have been someone's dream home. Instead, it was the site of a crime scene, even if the crime was emotional rather than physical. "Lily's at her dad's this weekend," Samantha explained. "I made sure she wouldn't be here for this. Whatever happens tonight, she doesn't need to see it." "Smart," I agreed. We sat in the kitchen, both of us too nervous to do anything but wait. At 6:15 p.m., we heard a car in the driveway. Samantha looked at me with wide eyes. "That's him." "Okay," I said. "Stick to the plan. Act normal. Let him think everything is fine. The deputy won't be here for another 45 minutes. We just need to keep him comfortable until then." Samantha nodded and went to open the door. I stayed in the kitchen, out of sight but able to hear everything. "Hey, babe." David's voice, cheerful and affectionate. "God, I missed you. Is that pasta I smell?" "Your favorite," Samantha said, and her voice barely shook. "Carbonara. I thought we'd have a nice quiet evening in." "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Where's Lily?" "At Marcus's for the weekend. I thought we could use some alone time." "Even better," David said, and I heard the sound of kissing. My stomach turned. They moved into the kitchen, and David froze when he saw me sitting at the table. The color drained from his face. He looked at me, then at Samantha, then back at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Natalie," he finally managed. "What are you doing here?" "Having dinner with Samantha," I said calmly. "She makes excellent carbonara. Did you know that?" "Of course you did. You've had it before." "I don't understand," David said, but his eyes told me he was starting to. Samantha crossed her arms. "Sit down, David." "Sam, what's going on?" "Sit down." He sat, slowly, like a man approaching his own execution. He looked between us, calculating, trying to figure out how much we knew and how much he could still salvage. "We know everything," I said, saving him the mental effort. "Samantha and I met 6 days ago. We've compared notes. We've shared evidence. We've hired attorneys. And in about 35 minutes, a sheriff's deputy is going to arrive at this door to serve you with divorce papers." David's face went from pale to gray. "Nat, please, I can explain." "No," I interrupted. "You can't. There's no explanation for what you've done. You stole from me. You lied to Samantha. You created false identities, manipulated your brother, and systematically destroyed 2 women's lives for your own selfish purposes." "I never meant to hurt anyone," he said weakly. "But you did," Samantha said, her voice hard. "You hurt both of us. You hurt my daughter, who thinks you're going to be her stepfather. You hurt your brother by making him complicit in your lies. You hurt everyone who ever trusted you." David's hands were shaking. "What are you going to do?" "What we're going to do," I corrected, "is make sure you face consequences. Legal consequences. Financial consequences. Professional consequences. You're going to lose your job, David. You're going to lose your savings. You're going to lose this house. You're going to lose everything." "You can't." "We can," Samantha said. "And we will. Because here's the thing, David, you underestimated us. You thought Natalie would be too heartbroken to fight back. You thought I'd be too invested in our relationship to question you. You thought you were smarter than both of us combined. But you weren't," I finished. "You were just arrogant. And arrogance always leads to mistakes. And your mistakes, they're going to cost you everything." We sat in silence, the 3 of us, as David's world crumbled around him. He tried several more times to explain, to justify, to bargain. But we shut him down every time. There was nothing left to say. At 7 p.m. exactly, the doorbell rang. Samantha answered it, and a sheriff's deputy stepped inside. "David Richardson?" the deputy asked. "That's him," I said, pointing. The deputy approached David and handed him a thick envelope. "Sir, you're being served with divorce papers and an emergency motion to freeze your assets. You're also being served with a civil lawsuit for fraud. You have 30 days to respond to each." David took the papers with numb hands. He looked at them, then at me, then at Samantha. "I loved you," he said to both of us. "Both of you. That has to mean something." "It means you're a liar," I said. "You can't love 2 people at once while lying to both of them. That's not love. That's possession. That's control. That's ego." The deputy left. David sat there with the papers in his lap, looking like a man who'd just watched his life end. "You need to leave," Samantha said quietly. "This is my house. I paid for it. And I want you out. Sam, please. Out. Now. Before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." David stood slowly. He looked at both of us one more time, searching for any sign of softness, any crack in our unified front. He found none. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry." "It's not worth much," I said. "But we'll make sure you pay for it anyway." He left. We watched through the window as he got into his car and drove away, the tail lights disappearing into the Miami evening. Then Samantha turned to me, and we both started crying. Not sad crying, angry crying. Relieved crying. The kind of crying that comes when you've been holding everything in for too long and finally, you can let it out. We did it, Samantha said. Oh my God, we actually did it. We're not done yet, I said. This was just the beginning. But yes, we did it. We stood up to him together. And he's going to remember this night for the rest of his life. We ordered pizza, because who could eat carbonara after that, and spent the rest of the evening plotting our next moves. On Monday, I would send the letter to TechFlow. On Tuesday, Samantha's attorney would file his lawsuit. On Wednesday, we'd both be in court for the emergency hearing on freezing David's assets. And through it all, we'd be together. Two women who'd been enemies without knowing it, now allies in the fight for justice. David had tried to pit us against each other. Instead, he created something he never expected, a partnership forged in truth and strengthened by shared purpose. And that partnership was about to burn his entire world down. The week after serving David was a whirlwind of legal proceedings, phone calls, and documentation. It was also when I started to see just how deep David's deception had run, and how spectacular his fall was going to be. Monday morning, I sent the ethics complaint to TechFlow Solutions. By Monday afternoon, I received a call from their chief compliance officer, a woman named Jennifer Torres who sounded both shocked and grimly determined. Mrs. Richardson, we take these allegations very seriously, she said. I need to verify. You're stating that Mr. Richardson used company resources and time to conduct an extramarital affair, stole marital funds, and created fraudulent identities. I'm stating all of that, and I have documentation to prove it, I confirmed. Bank records, flight records showing he claimed business trips that were personal, credit card statements showing personal expenses charged during company time. Everything. We'll need to see all of it. Can you send it by end of business today? I can send it within the hour. Please do. And Mrs. Richardson? Thank you for bringing this to our attention. If even half of what you're alleging is true, Mr. Richardson will not be working here much longer. I hung up and immediately forwarded the entire evidence package. Then I called Patricia. TechFlow is investigating, I told her. They sounded serious. Good, Patricia said. Because we just got the judge to approve the asset freeze. As of this morning, David cannot access any of his accounts without court approval. He can't sell anything, can't transfer money, can't touch his 401k or pension. He's financially locked down. What can he access? I asked. Whatever cash he has on hand. That's it. His credit cards are frozen, his bank accounts are frozen, everything. If he wants to buy groceries, he'll need to get court permission or use whatever cash is carrying. I felt a savage satisfaction at that. David had spent months carefully siphoning money from our savings, creating hidden accounts, building his separate financial life. Now all of it was frozen, inaccessible, locked behind court orders he couldn't circumvent. Samantha called me an hour later, her voice tight with satisfaction. David just called me. He's panicking. His cards aren't working. He tried to check into a hotel and his credit card was declined. He's staying with Cole. With Cole. I repeated. The brother he manipulated into helping him cheat. Apparently, Cole is the only person who'll take him in. His parents are furious. They called me to apologize, if you can believe that. His dad said they're ashamed of him. David's parents were good people. I'd always liked them. They treated me like a daughter, and I knew this would devastate them. I felt bad about that, but not bad enough to stop. What did you tell David when he called? I asked. I told him exactly what we planned. That I'm suing him for fraud, that I want my down payment back plus damages, and that if he comes near my house or Lily again, I'll file for a restraining order. How did he take it? He cried, Samantha said, and her voice was hard. Actual tears. Said I was destroying his life, that he loved me, that we could work through this. And you said? I said he destroyed his own life. Then I hung up. I smiled. Samantha had come a long way in a week. The woman I'd first met had been shattered, questioning herself, wondering how she'd been so blind. This Samantha was steel-wrapped in determination. Tuesday brought more developments. Robert Delgado, Samantha's attorney, filed his civil lawsuit against David for fraud, breach of contract, regarding the business promises, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit demanded return of Samantha's $60,000 down payment, plus $100,000 in punitive damages, plus attorney fees. Wednesday was the emergency hearing to make the asset freeze permanent. Patricia and I sat on one side of the courtroom. David sat on the other side with a court-appointed attorney. He couldn't afford to hire his own because his assets were frozen, which was beautifully ironic. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Carolyn Morrison, reviewed the evidence packet Patricia had submitted. Her expression grew darker with each page she turned. "Mr. Richardson," she finally said, looking at David over her reading glasses. "Is it true that you withdrew $73,000 from your marital savings account without your wife's knowledge or consent?" David's attorney whispered to him. David nodded miserably. "Yes, Your Honor." "And is it true that you used those funds to purchase a home in Florida under a false name?" Another whispered consultation. Another nod. "Yes, Your Honor." "And is it true that you've been conducting an affair for over a year while telling your wife you were on business trips?" "Your Honor," David's attorney interrupted, "while my client admits to marital infidelity, we don't believe that's relevant to the asset." "I'll decide what's relevant in my courtroom," Judge Morrison snapped. "Mr. Richardson, answer the question." "Yes, Your Honor," David whispered. The judge looked at him like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "I'm granting the permanent asset freeze and awarding temporary spousal support to Mrs. Richardson in the amount of $3,000 per month to be paid from Mr. Richardson's employment income. All marital assets remain frozen pending the final divorce decree. Additionally, I'm ordering a forensic audit of all accounts, credit cards, and financial transactions for the past 2 years. If we find any additional hidden assets or fraudulent transfers, Mr. Richardson, you'll be held in contempt of court. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," David said, his voice barely audible. "Good. We're adjourned." Patricia and I walked out of that courtroom victorious. David looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His attorney was already abandoning ship, telling him he'd need to find private counsel because the court appointments didn't cover the kind of complex fraud case this was becoming. But the best news came Thursday afternoon. I was at home, going through more of David's paperwork. We'd gotten court permission to search his belongings for financial documents, when my phone rang. Jennifer Torres from TechFlow. "Mrs. Richardson, I wanted to inform you personally. After a thorough investigation, we've terminated Mr. Richardson's employment effective immediately." My heart soared. "On what grounds?" "Multiple violations of company policy. Fraudulent expense reports. He claimed numerous personal trips as business expenses. Misuse of company time. His productivity had declined dramatically over the past year while he was conducting his personal affairs on company time. And most damningly, he'd been using company resources, including his company laptop and phone, to coordinate his affair and financial fraud. Our IT department found evidence of personal emails, financial planning for the Miami property, and communications with his brother about covering for him, all on company equipment." "So he's fired," I said, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. "Fired, and we're considering whether to pursue legal action for the fraudulent expense reports. That's theft from the company, Mrs. Richardson. He could face criminal charges." Criminal charges. I hadn't even considered that possibility. But yes, if he'd been filing false expense reports, that was theft. Corporate theft. Fraud. "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're a family-oriented company, and we don't tolerate this kind of behavior from our employees." I hung up and immediately called Samantha. "He's been fired." She screamed, actually screamed with joy. "Oh my God. Oh my God." And there might be criminal charges for the false expense reports. This is better than I ever imagined, she said. We've destroyed him, Natalie. We've actually destroyed him. Not destroyed, I corrected. Held accountable. There's a difference. But Samantha was right. David's life was in ruins. No job. No access to his money. No home, since he was couch surfing with his brother. His reputation shredded. Legal bills mounting. Lawsuits pending. His family ashamed of him. His friends, the few who'd heard the story, avoiding him. And it was all his own doing. Friday evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Please, National. Please just talk to me. I'm losing everything. I don't have anything left. Please. I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me, a small, foolish part that still remembered loving him, wanted to feel sorry for him. Wanted to reach out, to soften the blow, to be merciful. But then I remembered Marcus's phone call. I remembered Cole pretending to be David on my couch. I remembered the photos of David kissing Samantha, the text messages planning their future, the house he'd bought with my money. I remembered Lily calling him David Dad while I sat at home, childless, waiting for him to be ready. I remembered all of it, and mercy died in my chest. I didn't respond to his text. I blocked the number instead. But David wasn't done trying. Over the next few days, he attempted to contact me multiple times. He called from different numbers. I blocked them all. He sent emails. I set up a filter to send them directly to Patricia so I never had to read them. He even showed up at my apartment building, but the doorman called me before letting him up, and I told them he was forbidden from entering. His final attempt came via Cole. My phone rang, and Cole's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Natalie, please don't hang up, Cole said immediately. I know you have every right to hate me, but I need to. Say something. David asked me to call you. Tell David to communicate through his attorney, I said flatly. Natalie, please. He's not doing well. He's talking about, Cole's voice broke. He's saying things that scare me. About how he's lost everything, how there's no point anymore. I'm worried he might hurt himself. My stomach clenched. This was manipulation, I told myself. David trying to use guilt to get me to soften, to back down, to give him an opening. But what if it wasn't? Cole, if you're genuinely concerned David is suicidal, you need to call 911 or take him to a hospital. That's not something I can help with, and it's not fair for you to put that on me. I just thought, if you talked to him, told him there was a path forward, maybe. There is a path forward, I interrupted. He cooperates with the divorce proceedings, returns what he stole, accepts responsibility for his actions, and rebuilds his life without me in it. That's his path forward. But I'm not going to rescue him from the consequences of his own choices. And neither should you. He's my brother, Cole said weakly. And he manipulated you, paid you to lie for him, and made you complicit in destroying my life and Samantha's. You don't owe him anything, Cole. Especially not your mental health. There was a long silence. Then Cole said, You're right. I know you're right. I feel guilty. That's the guilt talking, not logic. David is an adult who made adult choices. Now he faces adult consequences. If he's genuinely in crisis, get him professional help. But don't call me again. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. David's apparently making suicidal statements to his brother. Is the brother concerned enough to have him hospitalized? I don't know. I told him to call 911 if he was genuinely worried. Good. That was the right response. Natalie, I need you to hear this. If David is genuinely suicidal, that's tragic, and he needs professional help. But you are not responsible for his mental health. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep him warm. If he's making these statements to manipulate you into backing down, that's emotional abuse. If he's genuinely in crisis, That's a medical emergency that professionals need to handle. Either way, it's not your burden to carry. I know, I said. I know that intellectually. But you still care about him, Patricia finished. That's normal. You spent 6 years with this man. You don't just turn off feelings because someone betrayed you. But those feelings can't dictate your actions here. You need to protect yourself, Natalie. You need to see this through. She was right. I knew she was right. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Cole's call. What if David really did hurt himself? Would I be responsible? Would I have to live with that? I called Samantha. Did David try to contact you today? 3 times. Blocked his number after the second call. Why? I told her about Cole's call. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "He tried the same thing with me yesterday. Said he couldn't live without me, that I was his whole world, that if I didn't give him another chance, he didn't know what he'd do." What did you say? I told him that was emotional blackmail and if he was genuinely suicidal, to call a hotline. Then I hung up. Natalie, this is a tactic. My ex-husband tried the same thing when I divorced him. Sudden threats of self-harm designed to make me feel responsible for his well-being. It's manipulation, pure and simple. But what if it's not? What if he's really? Then he needs professional help, not us. We're not therapists. We're not responsible for managing his emotional crisis. We're victims of his abuse, because yes, what he did was abuse, and we're allowed to protect ourselves without feeling guilty about it. Logically, I knew she was right. But emotionally, it was harder to accept. I'd loved David once. Despite everything, despite all the lies and betrayal, some small part of me still remembered that love. And that part didn't want him to hurt himself, even if he deserved to hurt for what he'd done to us. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined worst-case scenarios. By morning, I was exhausted and guilt-ridden and angry at myself for feeling guilty. But then my phone rang. Cole again. "I'm sorry to call again," he said immediately. "But I thought you should know. I took David to the emergency room last night. Not because he actually tried anything, but because I was worried. They evaluated him and determined he wasn't actually suicidal. The doctor said he was depressed and stressed, which is understandable given his circumstances, but he wasn't in immediate danger of harming himself." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you for telling me." The doctor also said, and I'm just repeating what she told David, that he needs to take responsibility for his actions and stop trying to manipulate people with threats of self-harm. She was pretty blunt about it. Said it was a form of emotional abuse and that David needed therapy, not enabling. Did David hear that? He heard it. Whether he accepted it is another question. But Natalie, I want you to know, I'm not going to be his messenger anymore. What he did to you, to Samantha, and how he used me to do it. I'm done. I'm his brother, and I love him, but I'm not going to help him avoid consequences anymore. "Thank you, Cole," I said, and I meant it. That takes courage. It's just what's right. Good luck with everything. He hung up, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. David wasn't going to hurt himself. He was just trying one last manipulation tactic, and it had failed. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings. The forensic audit revealed David had opened 3 separate credit cards I didn't know about, accumulating an additional $45,000 in debt funding his double life. The court ruled that debt was his alone to pay, not marital debt. Samantha's lawsuit moved forward. David's attorney tried to argue she'd made a gift of the down payment, but text messages between them clearly showed they discussed it as joint property. The judge wasn't sympathetic to David's position. My divorce proceedings accelerated. Patricia filed a motion to expedite based on the clear evidence of adultery and financial fraud. The judge agreed. We had a trial date set for 6 weeks out. And through it all, David tried everything. He sent flowers to my workplace. I had them donated to a hospital. He sent a handwritten apology letter. I forwarded it to Patricia. He tried to approach me in a grocery store parking lot. I got a restraining order. He was losing, and he knew it. Every legal maneuver failed. Every attempt to contact me or Samantha was rebuffed. Every day, his situation got worse while ours got better. Samantha and I talked daily. We'd formed an unlikely friendship through this nightmare. She told me about her work, her daughter, her plans for the future. I told her about my marketing business, my family, my slowly healing heart. We even joked about writing a book together, Asterisk the Mistress and the Wife, a guide to destroying the man who destroyed you. Asterisk. We really should write it, Samantha said during one call. There are probably thousands of women who need to hear this story. Maybe after the trials are over, I said. When we can write the ending. What do you think the ending will be? She asked. Justice, I said simply. Real, tangible justice. And 2 women who refused to be victims. I like that ending, Samantha said. I like it a lot. By the end of the second week, David had moved from denial to bargaining to anger. His attorney filed motions accusing me of vindictive litigation and Samantha of opportunistic fraud claims. Both motions were denied. He tried to argue he deserved half the value of our Dallas home despite his theft and adultery. The judge laughed, actually laughed, and told his attorney to withdraw that request unless he wanted sanctions. David's life, the carefully constructed empire of lies he'd built, was crumbling. And Samantha and I were there to make sure every brick fell exactly where it should. But we weren't celebrating yet. We both knew the hardest part was still coming, the trials themselves, where we'd have to face David in court and tell our stories in detail. Where he'd try one last time to rewrite history, to paint himself as the victim, to escape accountability. We weren't going to let that happen. The Dallas County Courthouse was imposing in that way government buildings try to be. All marble columns and heavy doors designed to make you feel small. But I didn't feel small as I walked up those steps on a cold November morning. I felt powerful, righteous, ready. Patricia met me at the entrance, her briefcase in one hand and a coffee in the other. Big day, she said. You ready? I've been ready for 2 months, I said. Good. Remember what we discussed. Stay calm, answer questions directly. Don't let David's attorney provoke you. Judge Morrison doesn't tolerate theatrics, and we have the evidence on our side. We just need to present it clearly. We entered the courtroom, and I saw David already sitting at the defendant's table with his new attorney, a tired-looking man named Gerald Krantz who'd taken the case on contingency because David couldn't afford a retainer. David looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Good. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and I saw him flinch. He looked away first. That small victory felt enormous. Judge Morrison entered, and we all rose. She took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. This is the divorce proceeding of Richardson versus Richardson, she said. Mrs. Richardson is seeking a fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery and financial fraud, as well as division of assets heavily weighted in her favor due to Mr. Richardson's misconduct. Mr. Richardson is contesting the degree of asset division but has admitted to the underlying acts. Mrs. Hendricks, call your first witness. The plaintiff calls Natalie Richardson to the stand. I walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat down. Patricia approached with a kind smile. Mrs. Richardson, how long were you married to the defendant? 6 years, 2 months, and 14 days. And during that marriage, did you believe it to be monogamous? Objection, Krantz said wearily. Calls for speculation about her beliefs. I'll rephrase, Patricia said smoothly. Mrs. Richardson, did your husband ever tell you he was involved with another woman? No, never. Did he ever tell you he'd purchased a home in Miami? No. Did he ever tell you he'd withdrawn $73,000 from your joint savings account? No. Patricia walked me through the entire timeline, Marcus's phone call, discovering Cole on my couch, finding the financial records, learning about Samantha and the house. With each answer, I saw David sink lower in his chair. Then came Krantz's cross-examination. He stood slowly, like this was all very tedious for him. Mrs. Richardson, isn't it true that your marriage had problems before you discovered your husband's affair? No, that's not true. Really? You never argued? Never had disagreements? Of course we had normal disagreements. All couples do. But we didn't have fundamental problems in our marriage that would justify what he did. Isn't it true that you were often focused on your career to the exclusion of your husband's needs? Patricia stood. Objection. This is victim blaming, Your Honor. Sustained, Judge Morrison said sharply. Mr. Krantz, the defendant has admitted to adultery and financial fraud. His wife's career focus, even if proven, would not justify those actions. Move on. Krantz tried a few more angles, but Patricia had prepared me well. I stayed calm, stuck to the facts, and refused to be rattled. After 20 minutes, he gave up. No further questions. Patricia called Marcus next. My brother strode to the stand looking sharp in his pilot's uniform, and I felt a surge of gratitude for him. Without that phone call, I might still be living in ignorance. Marcus testified about seeing David board the plane with Samantha, about the photos he'd taken, about David's behavior that made it clear this wasn't a business relationship. Krantz tried to discredit him, suggesting Marcus had misidentified David or was biased in his sister's favor, but Marcus was unshakable. I've been a pilot for 15 years, Marcus said calmly. I know how to identify passengers. I know my brother-in-law. And I know what I saw, a married man being intimate with a woman who wasn't his wife. Next came the financial expert Patricia had hired, a forensic accountant named Dr. Chen, ironically, who walked the court through David's theft in excruciating detail. The credit cards, the cash withdrawals, the hidden accounts, the fraudulent property purchase. By the time Dr. Chen was finished, there was no question David had systematically looted our marital assets. Finally, Patricia called Cole to the stand. David's face went white when his brother was sworn in. They hadn't spoken since Cole had taken David to the ER. Cole had texted me a few times, apologizing again, asking how I was doing. I'd been cordial but distant. He'd helped David betray me, even if he'd been manipulated into it. But now, Cole was about to make amends. Mr. Richardson, Cole Richardson, how many times did your brother David ask you to impersonate him at his home while he traveled to Miami? Cole looked directly at David. Approximately 23 times over 8 months. And did he pay you for this? Yes. $500 each time, increasing to $600 or $700 toward the end. Did you know he was visiting a romantic partner? I suspected after the first few times, but I didn't know for certain until Mrs. Richardson confronted me. Why did you continue to do it if you suspected? Cole's voice was quiet, ashamed. Because I needed the money. Because he was my brother. And because I told myself it wasn't my business. I was wrong on all counts. Krantz tried to discredit Cole, suggesting he was testifying against his brother for money or revenge, but Cole remained steady. I'm testifying because what we did was wrong, Cole said. I helped my brother lie to his wife, and I'm ashamed of that. No amount of money makes that okay. When Cole stepped down, David wouldn't look at him. The betrayal went both ways now. The trial lasted 3 days. Patricia presented witness after witness, document after document, building an irrefutable case of David's deception and theft. Krantz tried to argue mitigating circumstances, that David had been planning to leave me anyway, so the money was just an advance on his share of marital assets, that the affair was a symptom of marital problems rather than their cause. Judge Morrison wasn't buying any of it. On the 3rd day, she delivered her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case, she began. And I must say, in 23 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such egregious marital misconduct. David closed his eyes. Mr. Richardson didn't just have an affair. He created an elaborate scheme to defraud his wife, steal marital assets, and create a separate life built entirely on lies. He manipulated his own brother into participating in this deception. He created false identities for legal documents. He systematically drained the marital savings account. And when confronted, he continued to lie and manipulate. She looked directly at David. "Mr. Richardson, your behavior wasn't just unfaithful. It was calculated, predatory, and cruel. You didn't just break your marriage vows, you destroyed your wife's financial security and emotional well-being for your own selfish purposes." Judge Morrison shuffled her papers. "Therefore, I'm granting Mrs. Richardson a fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery and financial fraud. As to asset division, Mrs. Richardson is awarded the marital home in Dallas, free and clear. Mr. Richardson is awarded none of his retirement accounts or pension. Those belong entirely to Mrs. Richardson as compensation for the theft of marital savings. Mrs. Richardson is awarded 80% of all remaining marital assets. Mr. Richardson is ordered to pay $2,500 per month in alimony for 5 years. He is also ordered to pay Mrs. Richardson's attorney fees in full, estimated at $47,000. David was crying now, silent tears running down his face. "Additionally," Judge Morrison continued, "I'm ordering Mr. Richardson to attend counseling for 12 months and to have no contact with Mrs. Richardson except through attorneys. If he violates this order, he'll be held in contempt." She banged her gavel. "This court is adjourned." Patricia grabbed my hand and squeezed. "We won. We got everything." I nodded, unable to speak. It was over. My marriage was legally ended, David had been held accountable, and I could finally start rebuilding my life. As we left the courtroom, I felt David's eyes on me. I turned and looked at him one last time. He looked broken, defeated, a shadow of the confident man who'd betrayed me. I felt no pity, only closure. Outside the courthouse, Samantha was waiting. Her trial, the civil fraud case, was scheduled for next week. We hugged, and I filled her in on every detail. "He got destroyed," she said with satisfaction. "Completely," I agreed. "And soon, you'll get justice too." "I know," she said. "I can feel it." We went to lunch at a small cafe, celebrating my victory and preparing for hers. Two women who'd started as enemies, now friends, now warriors who'd fought together and won. "You know what the best part is?" Samantha said, raising her glass of wine. "What?" "He thought he was so smart. He thought he could play us both, keep us separate, maintain his perfect double life forever. But he made one crucial mistake." "What was that?" Samantha smiled. "He underestimated us. He thought we'd be too hurt, too embarrassed, too weak to fight back. He thought we'd compete for him or hate each other. Instead, we became allies. We became stronger together than he ever expected. And that's what destroyed him, his own arrogance." I clinked my glass against hers. "To underestimating women. May it continue to be men's downfall." We both laughed, and it felt good. It felt like healing. The next week, Samantha's trial ended with similar results. The judge ruled David had committed fraud by misrepresenting his marital status and financial situation, ordered him to return her $60,000 down payment, and awarded her an additional $40,000 in punitive damages. David was also ordered to sign over any interest in the Miami property to Samantha, making her the sole owner. Between my divorce settlement and Samantha's fraud judgment, David had lost everything. His home, his retirement, his savings, the Miami house, his job, his reputation. He was over $150,000 in debt between what he owed us and his attorney fees. He destroyed his own life just as thoroughly as he tried to destroy ours. But unlike him, Samantha and I were rebuilding. 6 months later. I stood in my home office, the home office in the house that was now solely mine, and looked out the window at the garden I'd planted last month. Roses, daisies, lavender. Things that would bloom in their own time, at their own pace. Things that couldn't be rushed or forced. Like healing. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. Just dropped the manuscript at the publisher. They love it. They think it'll be a bestseller. I smiled. We'd actually done it, written the book we'd joked about. Asterisk 2 women, 1 liar. How we destroyed the man who betrayed us both star. It had been cathartic to write, painful to relive, but ultimately empowering to share. The publisher had called it a revenge story for the modern age and a testament to female solidarity. But for Samantha and me, it was simply the truth. Our truth. And if it helped even one woman recognize the signs of deception and manipulation in her own life, it would be worth it. Congratulations, I texted back. We did it. We did it, she responded, emphasizing the we. Couldn't have done it without you. That was the thing about trauma. It could break you, or it could connect you to others who understood. Samantha and I had been broken by the same man, but we'd rebuilt ourselves together. We'd turned pain into purpose, betrayal into brotherhood. Marcus called an hour later. Hey, sis. Just wanted to check in. How are you doing? Good, I said, and realized I meant it. Really good, actually. I'm glad. You sound different. Lighter. I feel lighter. Like I finally let go of all the anger and hurt and just moved on. You deserve that, Marcus said. You deserve everything good. And hey, I'm proud of you. Not many people could have handled what you went through with such grace and strength. I didn't always feel graceful or strong, I admitted. There were days I wanted to fall apart. But you didn't. You stood up, you fought back, and you won. That's what matters. We talked for a few more minutes, making plans for Thanksgiving. Mom and Dad wanted to host, to bring the family together. I'd agreed, even though holidays had been hard since the divorce. But I was ready now. Ready to be with people who loved me, who'd supported me through the nightmare, who celebrated my survival. After I hung up with Marcus, I opened my laptop and checked my business email. My marketing consulting firm had exploded over the past 6 months. Apparently, my story had spread through professional networks, not the details, but the general outline. Woman discovers husband's betrayal, fights back legally, wins big. Other women started reaching out, wanting to work with someone who understood resilience. Someone who'd been knocked down and gotten back up. I had more clients than I could handle, more projects than I could manage. I'd hired 2 assistants and was considering bringing on a junior partner. The business that had once been a side hustle was now a thriving company. I'd lost a husband but gained a career. Not a fair trade emotionally, but professionally. It was transformative. My phone rang again. This time, it was Cole. We'd developed an unexpected friendship over the past months. He'd been genuinely remorseful about his role in David's deception, and he'd worked hard to make amends. He testified in both trials, he provided additional evidence when asked, and he'd been a source of information about David's current state. Hey, Cole, I answered. What's up? Just wanted to let you know, David moved. Left Dallas entirely. He's in Oklahoma now, working some dead-end sales job, living in a studio apartment. Mom says he's basically starting over from scratch. How does she feel about it? I asked. David's parents had been devastated by his actions. They'd apologized to me repeatedly, offered to help in any way they could. I'd assured them his choices weren't their fault. She's sad, Cole said. But she's also angry. She raised him better than that, you know? She didn't teach him to lie and cheat and manipulate. He chose that on his own. Is he in therapy? Yeah, court ordered. Whether he's actually engaging with it or just going through the motions, I don't know. Not our problem anymore, I said, and felt the truth of it. David's healing, or lack thereof, wasn't my responsibility. He'd made choices, he'd faced consequences, and now he had to live with both. You're right, Cole agreed. Hey, I wanted to thank you for not cutting me out of your life. I know I don't deserve your friendship after what I did, but I'm grateful for it. You made a mistake, I said. You admitted it, apologized for it, and made amends. That's more than most people do. We're good, Cole. After we hung up, I sat with the silence for a moment. David was gone. Not just from Dallas, but from my life entirely. The man I'd loved, the man who'd betrayed me, the man I'd destroyed legally, he was a chapter now. A painful, important chapter, but a closed one. I thought about who I'd been before Marcus's phone call. Trusting. Naive. Maybe. Comfortable in my life, never questioning whether the foundation was solid. Now I was different. Harder in some ways, but also wiser. More cautious, but also more confident. I knew what I was capable of, both the darkness and the light. I knew I could be ruthless when necessary, but also compassionate. I knew I could survive betrayal and come out stronger. That evening, Samantha video called me. Lily was visible in the background, doing homework at the kitchen table. "Hey," Samantha said, her face filling the screen. "Just wanted to see your face. This whole book thing is making me nostalgic for the early days of our partnership. Remember when we first met at Rita's Cafe? I remember thinking you were going to hate me," I said. "I was the wife, you were the mistress, at least, that's how I thought of it then." "And I remember thinking you'd hate me," Samantha said. "But instead, we became friends. Sisters, almost. Isn't it funny how life works?" "Funny isn't the word I'd use," I said with a laugh. "But I get what you mean. Something good came from something terrible." "Lily wants to say hi," Samantha said, angling the camera. Lily waved shyly. "Hi, Miss Natalie. Mom says you're the reason we still have our house." "Your mom's the reason we both have our houses," I corrected gently. "We helped each other." "She also says you wrote a book together. Can I read it when I'm older?" Samantha and I exchanged glances. The book didn't shy away from the ugly details, the affair, the lies, the legal battles. It wasn't appropriate for an 8-year-old. "When you're older," Samantha confirmed. "Much older. Like, college older." Lily rolled her eyes in that way only 8-year-olds can. "That's so far away." "It'll be here before you know it," I said. After we said goodbye, I made myself dinner, pasta with garlic and basil, the same meal I'd been making the night Marcus called. But this time, it tasted different. Better. Like I was reclaiming something that had been poisoned and making it mine again. I ate alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt peaceful. Before bed, I did something I'd been putting off for months. I opened the box of photos from my marriage, wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, holiday gatherings. All the evidence of the life I'd thought I had. I looked at each photo carefully, trying to see the signs I'd missed. The moments when David's smile hadn't reached his eyes. The times he'd been distant or distracted. The red flags I'd explained away because I'd loved him and trusted him. They were there, those signs. Faint, but present. And now I knew how to recognize them. I didn't tear up the photos or burn them in some dramatic gesture. That felt too much like giving David power he no longer had. Instead, I put them back in the box and stored them in the attic. They were part of my history, but they didn't define my future. Before I turned off the light, I checked my phone one last time. A message from Patricia. "Just saw the news about TechFlow. Thought you'd want to know." I clicked the link she'd sent. It was a press release. TechFlow Solutions had been acquired by a larger company. As part of the acquisition, they'd conducted a comprehensive audit and uncovered widespread fraud in their expense reporting system. Multiple employees had been filing false reports. Criminal charges were pending. David's name wasn't mentioned specifically, but I knew he'd been part of that investigation. More consequences, rippling out from his choices. I set down my phone and looked around my bedroom. My bedroom, in my house, paid for with my divorce settlement. The bed was mine. The furniture was mine. The life I was building was mine. David had taken a lot from me. My trust, my innocence, my belief in happily ever after. But he hadn't taken everything. He hadn't taken my strength, my intelligence, my ability to fight back. He hadn't taken my future. I'd taken that myself. I'd claimed it, fought for it, built it from the ashes of my broken marriage. And as I fell asleep that night, I didn't dream about David or betrayal or courtrooms. I dreamed about my garden, about roses blooming in sunlight, about things growing strong and beautiful in their own time. I dreamed about healing. And when I woke the next morning, I realized something profound. I'd forgiven myself. Not David, he'd have to earn forgiveness, and that was a journey that might take him years, if he ever even attempted it. But I'd forgiven myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for trusting when I shouldn't have, for being human and fallible and imperfect. That was the real ending. Not the legal victories or the financial settlements or even the published book. The real ending was me, standing in my kitchen 6 months after the worst night of my life, making coffee and smiling at the sunrise and feeling genuinely, authentically happy. Because I'd survived. Samantha had survived. We'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to us and transformed it into strength, friendship, and purpose. David had tried to destroy us. Instead, he'd forged us into something unbreakable. And that, more than any court judgment or settlement check, was the sweetest victory of all. If you've made it this far, thank you for reading Natalie and Samantha's story. While this is a work of fiction, the emotions and experiences described are based on real stories from real women who've survived betrayal and fought for justice. If you're going through something similar, please know, you're not alone, you're not crazy for feeling hurt and angry, and you have the right to protect yourself legally and financially. Document everything, seek legal counsel, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty for demanding accountability. And if you've never experienced betrayal like this, consider yourself fortunate, and treat your partners with the honesty and respect they deserve. Because as David learned, lies always come to light eventually. And the consequences can be devastating. Stay strong. Stand up for yourself. And remember, the best revenge is building a life so good, the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant.